Okay. Thank you all so much for doing this. So thank you. So today, just as like a quick overview, we're going to be talking about walkthroughs. We're going to look at what we're currently using and some other example ones and develop a new form at the end. So walkthroughs, what they're used for is to make sure that teachers understand clear expectations. What are making sure that they understand that when we go into a classroom, what are we looking for? And then they are used to be frequent. So like every 2 weeks, like we should be in those classrooms on a consistent basis. So it's as a support for them. And it's not like, oh my gosh, the principal's in here, or oh my gosh, the director or the coordinator's in here, like I have to do my best. Like these are used to support teachers and staff and like truly as a team. And then making sure that we have concrete evidence. And so it's not like a feeling like, oh, me and this teacher doesn't get along, or like there's personality differences. And so I'm harder on that teacher than this other teacher. Making sure that we have like evidence.
So data, or it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then the goal is to like make sure that we're increasing student learning. Obviously, we're here for the students. And then going into like the more of the why is to support and retain teachers, making sure that they have what they need, the tools that they need, or the toolkit to be successful in their instruction, and then to develop teachers and help them grow and identify needs. So like needs of students and the teachers. So we are do you have any questions about that?
When you say develop the needs of the students, no, not develop, identify, sorry. Identify the needs of the students. So we're identifying that like the students are having trouble comprehending something, so the teacher needs to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, so that's some of the things that we look for. If we can see, and that's why we use walkthroughs frequently, because then we can make that pattern. Like, is it every time that I go in and the students aren't comprehending something? Because then we need to take action. We might need to support the teacher on ways to make sure, either are you talking about like the actual content, or do you mean like maybe with directions or routines?
Either.
So yeah, and so that's something that if we identify that as a pattern, then we can address that.
Yeah, that tracks.
And then just because we're a deaf and hard of hearing co-op, I think we should take special considerations for that and make sure that we're not just using any walkthrough form, but also I think it's important that we are taking into consideration the expectations of our gen ed students and how we can also apply that for our, specific population so that they can be successful going into their, inclusion classrooms or anything like that. For walkthrough forms, this is the current, I only have it paper. This is the current walkthrough form that is being used. And so I'll go over it and then I'll pass it out to you. So it's date and time, room and location, who's observed, the number of students in the room, what was happening when they entered the room, like direct teaching, student breakouts, transitions, etc. And then who was in the room, so any support staff, interveners, interpreters. High impact strategies, so visual representation, interactive engagement, effective communication, and then other things observed and other things to consider. So those are, and it looks like it's in an electronic format, and so it might look like them going quickly into the classroom. I'm kind of like checking those boxes. And then this one is from Ohio. It's a state board of education. I thought that was interesting because it was like a state produced one. And so it has the information at the top, like just like the teacher name and all that. And then evaluator observations. It's kind of in a checklist form, making sure that they're consistent. instructional time is used effectively. And then there's observations and summary events. And so whenever y'all are looking at these, try and think of things that you like and things that you're like, oh, I think we could add to that. This is a special education one, and this, I would say, looks more like a t-test observation because it's like unsatisfactory, like it's more on a scale or rubric. This we want to. And there's another one, and there is respect and report, culture for learning, classroom procedures, behavior, physical space. And then it also has a spot for example, suggestions, and notes. And then there's this one that is elementary deaf and hard of hearing, classroom specific, and it talks about the classroom environment, clear line of visual, FM systems, more specific. And then practice with instruction. So like, is the teacher using clear expressive signing, spoken language? Are they using total communication? Is there direct teaching of vocabulary? More of those deaf and hard of hearing specific targets. And then also student interaction and then engagement. So like, how are the students communicating? Is there opportunities for peer-to-peer interactions and stuff like that?
I like to take notes. Did you want some of these? I totally just do they.
So is there anything that stood out to y'all as likes? Anything that you would like with all of that then? Help.
I was just.
You got it. One at a time, kids. One at a
So
time.
excited to both say it at the same exact time. So I was paying attention to
the fact that we are a special population, but there are other special populations in these classrooms that have similar, accommodations. And so it is interesting that almost all of them have addressed, high impact learning strategies, differential instructional strategies, right? Scaffolding to support strategies to motivate. So that is being acknowledged in all of these, which I think is important. And then also it was just like teachers need to be very clear on what they want from their students.
Yeah, what's your
Alright, so I like the different components and then how it deep dives into what specifically they're looking for. So, and then being able to put an example of how that's completed. So it's simple with the checklist, but then you're backing it up with real life data examples.
Yeah, and I think it does need to be specific, and so that there's not like a, if someone gets upset and you're like, oh no, well, it's like, well, here's the examples, and like, how can we improve from that? Because like, they might have their perspective on how that observation or law goes, and then it's like, well, here's the evidence. And it's like, kind of like you said, data or it didn't happen. Like, if there's not data to back it up, then let's work on it to where it is and it's clear to anyone who walks in as well.
And it's still easy with the checklist part because you still want it to be quick, but then also you have like agenda. It's still like clear and concise, like there's no opinion there.
Any dislikes?
Wait, I have a list.
I like it.
I've been waiting for my turn. So I also like the checklist. And I like how one of them had where it was a checklist, but it was also a rating. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, where it was like developing. Yeah, I like that. And I liked how the rating had descriptors underneath it. Because then it's backing up that data of, okay, this is what I saw. That's why you're here and not here.
Yeah.
So I really liked that part of it. And if you ever did like down the road want to align that with a state board or with T-Test or whatever, that would be easier to align because the language is very similar. So I did like that. And I like the comments section because then, like you said, you could have specific examples of like, here's the descriptor. This is exactly what you did. That's why we did this. I like how some of them give you the option to talk about like what topic they're going over, because I do think it's important to know like what we're walking into and whether it's the first day of instruction versus direct like instruction that I've ever given on this topic versus, okay, well, we're reviewing and then you're working on a group project or you're, doing some kind of individual evaluation or something like that.
I think that's important too, to understand where they are in the lesson, because I think if you go into the lesson on the first day and you're expecting, these high level of questions, like we're probably not going to get that, because some of these kids we might, especially with our students, we might have to give them some background knowledge or background experiences that they haven't had. And so asking like questions over here, not going to help.
What did you like?
I honestly liked how kind of like a good idea is to like take a little bit of everything and just kind of like create one that does work particular with our like situations and because yes, we are special ed, but we are also our own font under the special ed. And so we take what like I also do like the rubric and how that is, and just like pick and choose like what works best with those examples and then put it to what will be a good advantage for everyone.
I think that with those rubrics like you're talking about, when you go back over it with the teacher that you did it, it also shows where and how to improve and what you're looking for and what that improvement will look like.
And it's very clear and concise and not like, okay, well, I'm
What are your
two,
expectations?
then what, why?
And also, the teachers get that information, so they know what distinguished is.
Yeah.
They know what the ultimate goal is. Something like this where there is more, it's just kind of like, it is clear, right?
Mhm.
It's very concise, but then it leaves a lot of open
Mhm.
for, I don't know, mistakes, but yeah, opinions that may not be,
Mhm.
you know, what it needs to, right, what it needs to be.
Feelings are not.
There's,
facts.
there's like an obvious map of where,
Yes.
what
Is
the
it means are
growth
key.
will look like.
Yes. And I do like how if you're actually using it frequently, then you really should be seeing pieces of that lesson and how the
Mhm.
lesson is progressing.
Mhm.
You know, because it only would make sense to be used that way. Let's go see it at the first, let's go see it once in the middle, let's go see it at the end. Or, I mean, and it doesn't even have to be the same lesson per se, you know,
Yeah.
it can be different topics, but I think it's good to break it up like that and have it one.
And also too, if it's not progressing, then why?
Right.
To be able to figure out like what that common denominator or denominators are as to why it's not progressing like it should.
That's what, it's like with you about the mapping, whenever you're talking about mapping, that's why I kind of like this one, because it was like suggestions or next steps. And some of this, like, that part could be talked about after the observation
Mhm.
and kind of like a collaborative with the supervisor and the teacher and like, okay, review what was seen and then how are we going to create that roadmap like together?
I do think it's really important though to note that that frequency is so important. Because, I mean, I was in the classroom for a long time, and every time we'd have a quote unquote walkthrough, it was, hey, I'm gonna come for a walkthrough, you know, be ready. And it wasn't actually used as as a tool. It was used as I gotta check this off my list to get it done.
Yeah.
And it's not really what it's for. And then you're not doing any of the mapping, you're not really doing any of the improvement. So, yeah.
I agree.
I don't know
I
where I
think
was going with that.
going back to that, like the purposes or the why of walkthroughs, remembering that like this is to develop teachers
Right.
and then have positive impacts.
Not a
on them.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In the reality of it, these administrators are not going to have time to do it every couple of weeks. And I feel like there could be a way for them to, I mean, I don't know, like videotaping their lesson or like a feedback form of what they performed a lesson and then this is what happened and, you know, with the kids and how they were engaged and everything because it, you know, it really just happens once a year unless there's like large behaviors or there's like big concerns in those classrooms where the principal really needs to get in there to see how it's going.
That's
But,
true.
like, but like for a first year teacher, it's kind of like, okay, here's your class.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
important to like have that support too. Because I will say like most walkthroughs are only 15 minutes. So it's like I've had admin who they come in and they're like interacting with the kids and like they're not sitting in the back of the classroom just taking notes. Like that serves as a walkthrough. And so I think that's important for administrators to like keep in their brain and be like, not like an I got you or, you know, it's natural to see me in your classroom. I think that's
Yeah.
very important.
Well, and I think if we developed something that was a truly good checklist with those descriptors, it would be easier on administrators too, because they could just go in and say this and this and this, and hey, 2 sentences, I saw this and this.
Or like even having like the lead, like the team lead of the grade teacher, or like someone that has like a higher level in that grade where they could come in and observe and do kind of almost like a walkthrough and just to give the same kind of feedback of like, this is what I'm doing, you're doing this,
And if it's
this is how it
Absolutely.
could be improved or.
if it's a strong rubric or evaluation, then it's going to be used consistently. So no matter if it's the administrator or a team lead, it's going to give you the same data.
Yeah.
Our district likes to call those learning walks instead of walkthroughs. When it's anybody but an administrator.
So learning.
I did have some dislikes, I'm just saying.
I kind of listened to yours about the too much room
Yeah.
for interpretation.
I think there should be more options for, like, whenever we're having the descriptors, it should have plenty of options of these are things I've seen within the descriptors.
Mhm.
So that way, and those options should be scaffolded. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also feel like there should be sections for like if a behavior is happening while you're in the room and what communication modes are being used, because sometimes it's multiple.
That's what this one discussed, like expressive signing or spoken language was total communication or preferred modality of students. So like, I mean,
I like the classroom setup and the culture of the classroom
Yes.
as well, because we know that affects our kids.
That's true, but I do think it should be specific.
Uh-huh.
Like give options of what the culture could be, like what it might look like, and be specific about it. And then that way we're not just saying, well, it felt kind of tense.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but what are you seeing that's causing this? It's
Yeah.
not me walking in and saying, well, it was a little awkward in there. That's not helpful.
And this
That
gives
might-
good examples.
I was gonna say that might be like open, I mean, like, it's nice that it has the checklist, but I feel like that's more captured in like what's happening, like
And
an
it could.
observational note. But I think that there can be something like this where it's like, these are things to look for, and like
Yes.
whether it's present or not present.
I like that.
Yeah, but then to also have the extra space, even to like,
Yeah.
something that's not listed, like, oh, hold on, that just popped in my head.
Mhm.
Jot it down, to
Make it
discuss
where
later.
all y'all can kind of.
I also think that there should be specific to DHH, a section of usage of the interpreter, if there is an interpreter in the room, or usage of a paraprofessional, like, are the interpreters and the paras being used
Mhm.
to
Appropriately.
the most appropriate ways too, you know?
Yeah,
Is
and
there
like
a great
behaviors of
resource?
them, like were they standing in the corner of the class, or were they engaging in students, or were, you know, like,
Were they
just
being
all of
used
those. Yeah.
appropriately, or were they being used?
That too as well, so then that way later when that's also discussed, like, say the para was, ignoring the behavior or whatever, and the admin walks in and, but that's what's supposed to happen for that student, and you see the admin like, that can be discussed later on and given the teacher an opportunity to explain, this is what we do for the student for whatever situation. It's not like a full-on just negative type of thing.
And I think it's important too, like, that would kind of be where the admin would come in and be like, what system can we use? That way, if you are planned ignoring, like, you have something on your badge that you show me that like, then like, we had a kind of like red, like, we're planned ignoring. And we didn't have to say anything, we didn't look at the kit, like, it was just something that we showed if admin, or like, even if anybody, if the nurse came in, because sometimes the nurse comes in and they're like, what are you doing on the floor?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need that. I
Or you're
need
walking
you
down
for
the
planned
hall.
ignoring, or you're walking down the hall. So it's like, okay, Rena, we're not doing. But I think that's important too, like from an administrator point to, okay, I see that that is a thing that happens in your classroom. How can I support you to make sure too, not only that, administrators know that, but anybody who walks in the room.
Do
Absolutely.
y'all think it's other administrator responsibility, or like there should be a pre-meeting if like the teacher's classroom has DHH, dyslexia, behavior issues, ADHD kids, like all those kinds of things that are in their classroom that they have special things that they have to address? Like, if there is planned.
Like the kids that have specific requirements to
Or
help
like
them
whose
succeed.
responsibility is to let them know that like, hey, this is what you're walking into, just to catch you up.
I don't know if because just like we were talking about earlier, I don't know if they'll have time
Yeah.
for like a pre-meeting. Great, I'd love that. I think it would be awesome if they could do it.
Yeah.
But even if they couldn't, I think it might be a good idea for them afterward to come back and say, okay, like especially with our kids, what about HAT? What about their assistive listening device? Well, this one had behavior today because he left his cochlear at home. This one had behavior today because she had her hearing aid, but it wasn't connected to the mic, so she couldn't actually hear me like directly, and she was kind of all over the place, and like that kind of thing. But I think that because of the time constraints, it might even have to be an app.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, if it could be during, if we had a section on hat, and then, okay, all students have hat, or this student might not have had it, or whatever, and you can go
Using
back and circle back to it later. Yeah, are they using it appropriately?
Well, even that too as well, one thing that could be done is I know a lot of the teachers use like the Microsoft,
Form?
like the forms, the QR codes or whatever.
Yes.
And have something like that where it's like when they're having behaviors, there's options like, okay, why, the hat and all that, like why and what was the reason for it, and just like everything you said. So then it can also be,
Documented.
documented and then later on also shown to admin or whoever else is involved, like, this is why. This is the situation that happened today. This is why Susie left her cochlear at home. She got frustrated all day long,
And this happens all the time.
Yes.
Every day.
It's stated too.
Yeah.
Date, times, all the things. Yep.
One too, like regarding your concerns with, having a lot of different needs in one class, like sometimes that's like how it falls. Or sometimes there's a teacher that unfortunately gets all those needs because they're a strong teacher, or they'll say yes. And so but administrators, one, they need to work on not doing. So we don't cause the burnout and all of the things that happen. But two, a lot of times they know what's happening in a classroom. And so like mine, they would come in and then be like, oh, today's not a good day, like let me walk out. Like they have that relationship with you, and that's how it should be, is making sure that they know the students and they know their needs. And so whenever stuff like that happens, like again, it comes back to it's not an I got you. Like this is for me to support you. Now if the same thing's happening, every walkthrough, then let's figure out a plan.
One thing too that came to mind, and anyway, so like how y'all were saying, admin can't meet, all the time, pop in all the time, especially with just like the gen ed staff and stuff. Well, at the beginning of the year, they have the nurses meeting, they have bib that does the meeting, they have TISIS that does the meeting. If they were to like add something like, hey, SPED, DHH, da 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 da. And everybody, just so you know, if you experience or have a deaf ed student in your classroom, here's some like key things, what to expect, because even if, not every single teacher has a deaf ed student in their classroom all year, but say one teacher has to step out and then another teacher steps in for a second and one of our kids, blows up with them. Like they have at least like a general idea of like what to expect.
Because it's not just knowing how to use HAT, right?
Yeah.
These
It's-
kids have deeper,
Yes.
layers.
Right.
Onion.
So for developing, this is the form that we're using. And then, so whenever we're developing a new form, I know we kind of talked about, we said hat usage.
I like hat.
We said,
Communication modalities.
and then we said like staff and, how they are interacting. So like the planned ignoring, if they're doing that, or they might be sitting, there's an interpreter and a teacher, they might be sitting there just talking, just making sure that we're documenting what we're seeing. And then you said timeline of the lesson, like where they are in the lesson.
Yes, where they are in the lesson. I would say too, like what kind of strategies, those high impact strategies we were talking about are actually seen in the room. Are there visual representations of things? Is there like an agenda or schedule? This is what we're doing, first we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do that. And is that being reviewed? Because I can have a schedule in my classroom, but if I never talk about it, it's not really doing me much good.
No.
I agree.
And do the kids know about that? Do the kids recognize and,
their independence.
Yeah,
They're not relying on the
yeah, do they recognize that they can use the resources?
classroom routines.
Yes.
And then we also said that we like a rubric.
Yes.
So
Like,
there's this one.
I like that.
Now,
Except I don't like the word unsatisfactory because
well, yeah.
that feels.
I was kind of
very
thinking of
negative.
like a 1, 2, and 3, like either observed, like majority of the time, some of the time, or not observed. And so, because if you're in there in classrooms, then it might not be observed this time, and that's not going to go against you. But next time, it might be observed.
Yeah,
You
it just
know?
depends on,
What's
What's happening in the class.
On that one, that might not have been observed, no, that little note on the bottom.
Unchecked boxes mean only that a trait was not observed during this short observation. I like it.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean that it didn't
yeah,
happen.
the trait may
Right.
not have been applicable to this lesson, or it may
Yeah.
have been demonstrated before or
I
after.
like that.
I like that little
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
And I like the word emerging rather than unsatisfactory. You're just gonna say needs development or emerging. You need some support.
yeah.
Do you want
Is there
metaphor? Blossoming.
is there a specific like layout that y'all like better?
I like this
I
one.
know.
Yeah. That's
very
clear,
similar to
that's-
Do you
teachers
like
also.
charts?
Yeah, I think in how it gives examples in each box.
I don't like this one, throw it away.
Well, also too, to have,
I like that one.
I don't like that.
I like this one because it talks about like clear visual, like are the students in line with, or like how are they seeing,
Yeah.
are there obstructions in the visuals? Is there a glare? Like I think that the stuff that it hits on,
I just don't like the formatting. It's not the content is fine. It's the format. I don't
yeah.
I feel like also in a sense, well, this too, but this is more of like the going off of the notes of what was taken. So like something in a sense, kind of like whether it's this or this, like these are all the boxes or whatever. And then from that, this is like the grade per se of what you get. Ish. Okay.
I
That
mean,
makes sense.
it's, yeah, because we're mapping, right? We're
Yes.
talking about a map of development. So we're collecting data points. So it's not even a grade, it's just a data point.
Yeah.
This is where you were, this is
Yeah.
where you should be.
And that's a good way to put it. Like it's not, we're not looking to see like, oh, you got a 4, a 3, and then I'm gonna like.
Yeah.
But I do like, that's one thing I like about T-Test is that it sets apart the different like categories or parts of the rubric by like one word.
Yeah.
So it'll be like sometimes,
Ways.
or like clearly seen, all students.
I like it. You could even do a map if you so desire. I'm just saying.
That'll come later. Let's
Fair,
put this on the form.
fair.
One thing I do like about the form that's being used now is that it is in a form, like actual like computer form.
Yeah.
And so then it'll go to a spreadsheet and then you can kind of track like the teacher's progress.
And the teacher can track their own progress.
Yeah.
I like that paragraph. I agree.
Yeah, and it'll make them visual.
Love those visuals.
Okay, so we will take all of our notes and what we've discussed and everything else and work on a new walkthrough form and then share it with y'all to review. That sounds good.
Good talk.
Anything else y'all want to?
Thank you so much for choosing us to be a part of this meeting.
You're welcome.
Good team.
Y'all are all valued. Thank y'all.
Golly gee, Wilson's face. Good talk.